As we get closer to finishing this project, we're going to knock out one of the big jobs, and that is going to be valve adjustment on Kawasaki Concours 1000.
This is pretty much the worst video ever made.
Napoleon, like anyone can even know that.
Hello my friends, and welcome to Tom's Tinkering and Adventures. Today we're going to do the valve adjustment on this Kawasaki Concours. This is a 1988 model. Should be the same up to 2007, 2008. I can't remember when they changed these to the 1400, but all the thousands are pretty much exactly the same. So let's get cracking on it. You're gonna have to remove your seat. That's taken off for the key on the side over here. Remove your tank. I've been off and on working on this bike a little bit, so I already have some stuff removed. The bolts are out. And take off these side covers. There's really just like one screw on each side and they pop out. And we're probably gonna have to remove the lower plastic. So I'll get all that done. All that's pretty straightforward. There's a kind of a bar thing underneath here that's kind of a pain. Just think about that when you're putting it back together, and get yourself a little bucket to put all these screws in. I think they're pretty much all the same size, but you know how it goes. So I'll get her stripped down. Okay, so I had the radio playing while I was doing that, and it took one song to get all the plastics off, so it's really not that hard. And I did lie, the screws are a little different sizes, so keep track of them, but it's pretty easy to figure out. Here's that support bar that goes across the fairings on the bottom. That's kind of a pain when you put it back together, but this bike spent some time sitting outside, so you can see the cover's kind of nasty. And you know, if you got miles on yours, whatever, there's gonna be dirt up here. So if you have an air compressor, blow everything off. I still have to do that. Looks like we're probably gonna have to take whatever these things are, probably like some sort of an air management for the radiator, blowing the hot air out or whatever. Those will probably have to come off as well. And then remove your spark plug wires. I don't know if they're all labeled like this, but that's kind of nice, so you know where they go back in there. And then compressed air again, blow out the spark plug wells if you're going to be taking the spark plugs out, which now is a great time to change spark plugs. So I'm going to remove these items, and then I'll loosen up the valve cover bolts. There's probably, looks like 6 of them. And you can see there's modified air injection system on this bike. It's all been removed because it was all rotted out. That's kind of I won't say a common mod, but some people do that. So if you want to remove that system, you can. You can probably even buy blank off plates or make blank off plates for here to make it a little bit nicer. These might have to come off, these covers, I think. Looks like there's not going to be enough room to pull this out with those on there. So I'm going to clean this all up and we'll bring you back. All right, so I loosened up the coils and moved them out of the way. Got all the spark plug wires out. I did remove these, whatever you call them, that little air breather system thing on the top of the valve cover. All the bolts are out. Now this is an old bike. It's got 62,000 miles. I'm going to try to be very careful with this gasket, but what I like to do is give it a couple of love taps. Let's try to loosen that gasket up. On the other side, do the same thing. And looks like the cam chain is on this side, I'm guessing, that big ridge. So it'll probably come off on that side. You can see there's lots of stuff still coming loose on here, so I'm going to give it another blow with the air nozzle in a minute after I loosen it up a little bit more. We might just about have it. Yep, there we go. So let me blow that off. We'll lift it up and carefully move it out that side, left-hand side. When you're saying sides on a vehicle, it's always from the back, left, right. Okay, really wasn't too terrible. I've worked on more difficult vehicles than this, but Can't say that it was easy, but it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad at all. And these are screw and lock nut adjusters, so very easy. You don't have to pull the cams. Now, the proper way to do this is to take this side cover off here. So I guess I'll show you the right way, because I was going to maybe pull the spark plugs out and then put it in gear and turn the back wheel. And that's something you can do as well. But we'll pull this side cover off and show you how to do it the proper way. All right, so there's your crankshaft nut right there. That's a 24 millimeter. And you're supposed to turn it counterclockwise. Now there's a mark on here. Right there, you got a little T. There's another mark. So basically what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna watch the valves open and close here. And actually right now, I got this T coming up on the mark. And I can see, let's see, exhaust valve is opening on number 1. So we should be coming up on, there's the exhaust valve opening. Next will be intake. And once that thing goes around, both these cams should be opposing each other. And we should be at top dead center on number 1. I'm guessing that's what this T is going to be. There you go. So our exhaust valve is pointing forward, our intake valve is pointing aft. We're on the T, so we can check those valves. And you're going to want to check the clearance between the little adjuster nut and the top of the valve. And let's see, I wrote down the clearances over here. Intake is 0.005 to 0.007 inches, 0.13 to 0.18 millimeters. So let me get my feeler gauge set up. So I don't know if you're going to be able to see that on there, but that is a 0.006 inches, 0.152 millimeter. So we're going to try, see if that'll fit in the intake side here. And it does. And it does. And we can check the exhaust, which I forgot already. I didn't even say it, 18 to 23. So we'll do the same thing. I'll get the 20, which is right in the middle, and we'll check those exhausts. There's the 20. And it's in there. And it ain't easy holding the camera and a feeler gauge, but it's in there on that one too. So now I'm just going to turn the engine over slowly, and I'll check them one by one. You can probably go in firing order. I think it's like 1, 3, 2, 4, I forget, but I'm just going to do them in order just so I don't get confused. I'm going to turn this, I'm going to watch the valves until they're opposed just like this and check them all. All right, that wasn't too bad. I checked all of them. The only ones that are anywhere close are the number 4 intakes here, a little bit on the tight side. I can get the 13 under there, but I'd like to open them up just a little bit. So what I'm going to do is loosen these jam nuts here, and then you turn this flathead screwdriver fits in here, so you just open that up a little bit. Make sure your proper feeler gauge fits in there, and then tighten down the lock nut. So I'm going to go ahead and adjust those right now. Okay, I loosened the lock nuts up, and I've got the closest I've got to an 18 and 0.174, which is, you know, 007, that's fine. And I've got that one in there, feeling kind of snug. Now, if you're the type of person who wants to get exactly in the middle of the range, you can do that. Some people like to run their valves on the tight side for, you know, more performance, or on the loose side for more longevity. Do whatever makes you feel good. If I open this thing up and all the valves are measuring within specs, I'm probably not going to mess with it. It's just me. These were close and probably could have got away with it, but while we're in here, it doesn't make sense not to adjust it. Now, like I said, I'm going to adjust this on the loose side because what happens is when you tighten up this lock nut, it's really hard to tighten that and hold this without losing your exact clearance. So it's probably going to tighten up just a little bit. So set it. What I like to do is try to snug that down a little bit, that I can still turn this a little bit, and then tighten it down. Like I said, I'm sorry I don't have the torque spec for this, but I'm going to get it German good and tight, Guten tight, and then check it again after you adjust it. And what you should be going for is you should be able to feel some friction on this. It shouldn't just slide in and out of there easily. You should be able to feel it like someone is just kind of pinching it a little bit. So we are good to go. Now, I think what I'm going to probably do while I have this off, I'm going to pull one of the spark plugs out, take a look at it. I have a whole bunch of spark plugs. I may have the ones I need here. If I do, I'm going to change them. If not, well, I'll inspect them and we'll replace them if I have them. D8EA spark plug, and it doesn't look terrible, but if I have them, I'll put new ones in. I have a whole box full of spark plugs up here somewhere. The treasure trove here. D8EA. Now that doesn't mean they're exactly right, because sometimes you get some that have a different end on them. So let's see what we got here. They look good. D8EA. D8EA. Always check to make sure they're the same length. Yeah, let's put new plugs in. We got, looks like I got 4 of them, maybe even 5. All right, excellent. Don't forget to check the spark plug gap. On these, it's 0.025 inches is what it says. And these were pretty darn close out of the box, just a tiny bit off. I'll change all 4 of these out and we'll start putting her back together. Your spark plugs can tell a little tale of what's going on in your engine. So I got them in order, 1, 2, 3, 4 cylinder. And these 3 all look like they're nice and brown. This one's a little bit darker. I don't know if I'm overly concerned by it, but just a little bit on that one. They look like pretty healthy spark plugs overall. I've seen a lot worse. And honestly wouldn't be too concerned about running those, but we have fresh plugs in there. So now we'll put this side cover back on, and if you're like me, you didn't purchase a fresh gasket, so maybe put a little bit of sealant on it because the gasket's stuck on here. So I'm going to put a little bit of sealant on here and pray for the best, and if it doesn't work, we'll replace that later. And then also, when we put the valve cover back in, I'm just going to put a little dab of sealant right in these half moons on both sides, and try to be careful, get that thing back in there. When you have the top off, it's always a good time to check everything out when you're doing this. So look at the cam, see if there's any abnormal wear, anything that looks out of place. Everything looks really good on this bike. I'm not surprised that the valves were 99% in spec, because you don't get 62,000 miles on a bike without maintaining it usually. So I'll get this cover on and slide that valve cover on, and I'll let you know if anything crazy happens. It actually went back in easier than it came out. Now, if I really was like thinking about keeping this bike forever and was worried about cosmetics, of course we could have cleaned this all up and painted it, but it's going to run the same whether that's painted or not. So I'm really not overly concerned with it. And these are those exhaust air valve things or whatever they're called. It injects air into the exhaust system or something like that. I forget exactly what it does. I've heard a lot of different ways that you can eliminate the system if you want to get rid of additional plumbing on your bike. I've heard of people actually taking the valve cover off and tapping this and putting a set screw in there with high temp silicone. I actually took these little flapper things off and hammered them down to keep the valves closed. And between that and then I just put a plug in the end of this piece of hose. But you could also make a little blank off plate here. It's pretty easy out of aluminum or something, but that's neither here nor there. If you want to leave the whole system on there, that's fine too. It runs fine. I don't think this changes the way the bike runs at all. Just makes it a little bit easier to work on under here. Now I'm going to put some silicone spray on these spark plug boots when I put them back in here, because a couple of them came out very difficult, and actually number 3 was stuck and I damaged it a little bit, but I think it's going to be okay. If not, I'll have to track down another spark plug in for that. But we'll get them in there, put these remaining pieces on, and wrap this job up. Everything went back together pretty nicely, so no problems there. Like I said, the valve cover went in easier, much easier than it went out. So I guess if you're having trouble getting the valve cover out, stop, think about it a little bit, and you should have no problems with that. Now's a good time when you got the side covers off and everything to check any leakage. I'm going to do an oil change as well here, but I don't really need to make a video on that. This bike's pretty easy to do an oil change on. But there you have it. Valve check, adjustment, spark plugs, not too bad. And that'll just about conclude all the maintenance I had planned for this bike here. We did a lot of stuff on this thing, and for a $250 bike, hey, you know, like I said, 62,000 miles. I know that's a lot of miles for some people, but on a bike like this, this is a, I don't know, I've seen these things with 200,000 miles, and this thing still has a lot of life left in it. So once I get the oil changed, and maybe I'll even do a coolant change, this thing is going to be ready for a road trip. And let's cross our fingers. My buddy, who he and I are kind of like in this bike together, he has the exact same bike, a couple years newer, so we will hopefully get out together and do a road trip with these two bikes. So look for that in the future. All right, if you are enjoying my content, give me a thumbs up, leave a comment down below. If you're not already a subscriber, please consider doing so. Thank you very much for watching. Get out there and find your adventure. Adios.